What's up, everybody? Welcome back
Hey,
to Set Point Sessions. My name is Austin Davids. I am the founder of Set Point Mental Edge, and I am joined once again by my brother, who is another year older. Happy
let's
late
go.
birthday, dude. This is Andrew Davids, everybody.
Hey guys, what's up? Episode 4 or it's not real. Am I right?
It doesn't happen if there's no episode 4. That's what the professionals say.
That's right. That's right. And here we are, episode 4. Let's do it.
That's why they're professionals, because they've made it past 4 episodes. Like I said, Andrew is an older man now. He turned yeah, I think it's 30, 33. It's got to be 33,
33.
right? Wow.
33. And look,
Congratulations. Happy
shout out
birthday.
shout out my wife. She got me a fancy new mic just for the podcast. Like episode 4 or it's not real, and gotta have a real mic or it's not real.
You're spot on. Um, Today, for this episode, we're going to talk about a topic that was actually suggested to me by a listener, which is incredible. I'm sitting
Love
here
that.
thinking nobody's listening to us, and I got people suggesting things that we
Love
talk
that.
about on the pod. So this is awesome. I want to
Super.
thank everybody that's listened, everybody that's tuned in, everybody that's reached out. This has been great. 4 episodes in, a million to go. We're really looking forward to it today.
Share us. Share us with your friends. Spread the word. Set Point Sessions is where it's at.
You're not cool if you're not listening to Set Point Sessions. That's what somebody told me. I don't
I heard
it's just
that.
what I heard. Word on the
I heard
street.
that.
Set Point Sessions is the cool thing now. Um, let's get into it. Today we are talking about the flow state, better known as being in the zone, or as the youngins like to say these days, locked in.
Locked in.
Um,
Oh, coach, I'm so locked in.
that's your favorite thing to hear at practice, isn't it? You love
Well,
that.
I'm sure we'll get to that.
Fantastic. I think this is important because this, of all things, is something that applies to everybody. This can apply to people in an everyday job type situation, musicians, performers, athletes, students, everything. When you are in that flow state and you are reaching, the full potential that you have and everything is going well, I think we can all think of a time that, you know, we've been in that zone, so to speak. So, in simple, super relatable kind of terms, I'm going to define flow state. Um, and that is the state of total focus where you're completely absorbed in what you're doing. In a sense, time slows down, everything feels effortless, and your performance is at its peak.
Yeah. And I think it's also really important to understand as we kind of get into this conversation that flow state is not something that you can make happen intentionally. We're going to talk about, we just defined it. We're going to talk about the little pieces of it. We're going to talk about some of the things that you can do to kind of make yourself a little bit closer to the flow state or make it maybe a little bit more likely that you achieve that flow state. But I think it's really important that our listeners know and athletes and performers and whoever understand that flow state is not something that I can make happen on purpose every time. If it happened every time, that's not the definition of flow state. You can't be at 100% focus, at 100% effort, and 100% ability every time. There are things
Absolutely.
that we will discuss that help you get there, that can increase the chances of getting there. Um, but it's really important to not get frustrated if you're on the court or on the field or competing in whatever, and you're trying to get there. You're trying really hard to get to flow state, and it doesn't work. Like that's not how it happens. That's not how it works.
It's not a power up you can just pull out of your pocket and choose to use on a given day. That's very well said. Let's talk about where the term flow state comes from. Again, in this podcast, you're going to hear us talk about being in the zone, being locked in, flow state. All these things are the same thing. So, where this term came from, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this. Okay, we're going to see if we can flow through this. His
Yeah, get
name,
your flow state.
his name is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Csikszentmihalyi. Okay.
It's not spelled
This
that way.
it's not spelled that way at all. There's a C in there, there's a Z, there's just a
There's a
lot of letters that probably shouldn't be next to each
yeah,
other,
yeah.
but it is what it is. from here on, his middle name is actually Robert. It's probably Robert or something like that, but we're going to call him Robert. This gentleman will be referred to as Robert simply so I don't make a fool of myself. Anyway,
Cordially,
in 19
Bobby.
Bobby, yes,
Bobby.
Bobby, Robbie, Robert, all the above. In 1990, he wrote a book called called Flow: The Psychology of Optimal Experience. The important thing to know about this is that it wasn't necessarily designed for athletes. It was just kind of about life in general. Um, I wasn't alive in 1990. I don't know what they were doing in 1990, but I can only imagine that it was still applicable to, everyday things that we're
Mhm.
doing today. Um, he defined it as complete absorption in an activity where a person experiences, and there's six things that this person experiences. Okay, just bear with me: intense focus and concentration, being locked in, merging of action and awareness, acting automatically, which means essentially trusting your training, trusting the things that you've gone through to be in that position. Loss of self consciousness. That doesn't mean you black out and pass out. That means you are not worried about the outcomes. You're not thinking so much as you are
Mhm.
acting.
Mhm.
Sense of control. It's pretty self explanatory in my book. You have control over the situation. Altered perception of time. That's a huge one. Anybody who's been
Yeah.
in the zone knows that time seems to slow down a little bit. And lastly, intrinsic reward, meaning that it's enjoyable for the person and it's very fulfilling for them as well. I know that's a mouthful, but take it away, Andrew.
Yeah, so all of those six things, whether it's something on the court or something on the field or something that you're doing in your work or focusing really in on your homework or a project that you have, when you get into that flow state, you might not realize it in the moment, but when you look back on when you're doing it and after you're out of that flow state, then you can kind of realize, oh yeah, well, like I spent 2 hours working on that project. It felt like I was working on it for like 30 minutes. And that sense of time, and then when you're really working things and everything's just clicking, you're in control of everything and you're kind of you're not thinking about everything super hard. It just is coming to you and it's just from one thing into the next and you don't have to think about your transitions and you don't have to think about how you bridge from one activity into the next or whatever. So it is a mouthful, those six items that he mentions it in that book, but when you really break it down, I think it makes a lot of sense and it's very applicable and it does a good job, I think, of describing what we're talking about here with the flow state.
I absolutely agree. I think one of the big things to kind of put yourself in a better situation to be in the flow is to look forward to what you're doing or what you're going to do. If you dread going to work, if you dread the sales meeting, if you dread going out and playing a tennis match or playing against your rival high school, chances are you're probably not going to be in that locked in zone. But if you're looking forward to it and you're ready for that opportunity, I think that kind of that pushes a little bit more to experience that flow state. In certain moments or matches, Andrew, what makes those more likely to produce that flow state? Give me an example of a moment that might be more likely to produce a flow state for somebody.
Eh, I keep finding myself in the realm of the competition zone. Um, and this is probably I think the third week in a row I've mentioned that on here. But if you find yourself too far outside of that competition zone, it's not it's either not challenging enough or it's too challenging of a task, and it's hard to achieve that flow state in being in the zone. I think if you have a task that's perfectly aligned with your skill set and your skill level, I think it's a lot easier to find just that right level of being challenged, so that things aren't too easy and they're not too difficult where you're unsuccessful at the tasks that you're trying to do, um, but you're finding the sweet spot and you're working hard, you're focused on the task, um, and it's just kind of the perfect storm, in a sense, to make that the concentration, the effort, the skill, all of that kind of comes together perfectly, um, to to put you into that spot.
It's kind of like winning the lottery in a sense. Or let me rephrase this. It's like hitting a parlay, you know? It doesn't
Yeah.
happen very often, but sometimes you get lucky and every now and then everything just comes together,
No,
works in your favor.
I kind of like the lottery example too. I've played a lot of tennis matches in my lifetime, and I can think of a stretch of like two matches, like two consecutive matches. It was one tournament where I felt like I was completely in the flow state. And that's in my entire I'm now 33 freaking years old. That's in my entire tennis playing career. Like
But think about
that
how many times were you not 100% in the flow state, but how many times were you, would you say like 75% or 80%? You
sure.
know, how many
Sure.
times were you close
Pretty
to that?
close. Pretty close to the flow state, probably a handful of times.
Yeah.
Um and there's different levels of that focus and that flow state. Um but like I said, I think only one time. I was thinking about this earlier today because I knew what we were going to be talking about, and I was like, I think that's the only stretch of tennis in my entire life that I have been 100%, I feel like, in the flow state and kind of just out of my mind. In the tennis world we call it treeing, and like I was completely treeing, and that's the only time that I can think of, that's happened to that extent. So I think
Yeah.
I think more like hitting a lottery. I think you've probably hit a couple of parlays in your betting career, but I've only hit the flow state once, and I've never won the lottery. So
Come to me for all your parlay needs. I've got them lined up.
you don't want to tag on Coach Austin. Is that
Tail.
tail?
You don't want to
You don't want
tail
to
me.
you don't
Yes.
want to tail
Yes.
Coach Austin's
You
parlay.
you want to fade my parlays. That's what you want to
There,
do.
there we go.
There you go. Come to us for all of your betting terminology. You were talking about the examples of like when you were in that flow state.
Yep.
Um, Tell me a little bit more about that and just what you think. I know you said it was a while ago and when you were probably a little bit younger, but what do you think led up to that moment? What allowed you to be in that peak
Um,
condition?
so yeah, it was a futures tournament back like in our high school playing days. Over the summer, it was it was the doubles draw of one of the Kansas City futures tournaments, and I was playing with Blake Hunter. Shout out Blake, how you doing? Don't know if you're
Hey,
listening,
Blake.
but hey, I appreciate you being my doubles partner for this tournament. Um, we had and Blake is a heck of a player and was a heck of a player. He was a better tennis player than I was. I think at that age for sure. Um, and so I think part of what allowed me to get to that flow state in those particular set of matches, was probably the lack of pressure that I felt. I was really loose, um, and just kind of playing free. Um, the guys across the net, back when we were kids, the terminology is different now, but back when we were kids, the futures were, the pretty good players, not the really, really, really good players, but like the pretty darn good players. And so, um, I kind of felt like I was the worst tennis player, just judging by skill in a lot of those matches. Um, Now, doubles skill versus tennis skill is a little bit different. We don't have to talk about that, but I trusted my doubles skills, but I felt like I didn't have any pressure on me because the other guys were just better than me, and I had no expectations of myself to go out and win matches. Um, And so that looseness and the freeness that I felt, I think helped me get there. Um, it was so long ago, I can't really remember any, of the specific details on the preparation or the specific, point to point, match to match thought process. Um, but I remember, like, we ended up winning the tournament. Blake and I won the futures doubles tournament, and I remember talking to him like, I don't know how I just did that. Like, I was hitting shots out of my mind. I was, um, and he kind of had that same thought. Like, while we were on the court, he was like, "Oh my goodness, what? Where is this coming from?" And I was like, "I don't know where it's coming from, but I like it." And like, that's kind of the point of a flow state. You don't know how you got there or why you got there, but man, you love it once you're there.
We're going to talk a little bit about the performance psychology framework behind flow. There's a lot that goes into it. Andrew just touched on the competition zone, and as you all know, he's huge on that. The first part is balance between challenge and skill, and this is literally the competition zone that Andrew's talking about. You want to be playing in an area, so to speak, that isn't too easy for you, but it's also not too challenging. Somewhere that you can be right within your comfort zone of your abilities and your skill. That if you're there, you have a better chance of being in the zone. You have a better chance of being in that flow state. Um, we'll see if Andrew talks on week 5 about competition zone. We'll find something to tie it in some way,
I'm
somehow.
sure we can figure it
Um,
out.
we'll figure it out. Another thing is clear goals and immediate feedback. Know what you're working for, and also immediate feedback from yourself to correct the things that aren't working, the things that might be pulling you out of that state or pulling you further away from being in it.
I think
Complete
I'm gonna
concentration.
hold on. I'm gonna interrupt on
Go,
that
go,
immediate
go.
feedback. I think a little bit. It's important that feedback, I don't think, is emotional. It's kind of like observational and fact based, kind of like what Coach Drew Smith was talking about last week. Um, you know, telling yourself something after your golf swing that is a fact. That feedback can't be emotional, and when we get tied up in our emotions, we kind of pull ourselves further away from that flow state. And so I think giving yourself the correct kind of feedback is really important there.
That's a great point. Shout out to Drew. What a
Yeah.
great guest for us last week. He was awesome.
You think he's
Um,
still listening? I don't know.
hey, Drew.
Hey,
What's up,
Drew.
Drew? Hey, man. We'll have you back on sometime soon. The next one is complete concentration and presence. So, what this is discussing, what this is talking about is no outside distractions. And if there are any outside distractions, you're essentially not bothered by them at all. They have no, whether that's a parent outside the fence, or maybe it's a annoying kid tapping his pencil on the desk during a test. Whatever those things pulling you away from pure focus, you just kind of don't worry about. You don't even know they're there, right? There's just not really a way to put earmuffs on and tune it out. You just kind of don't pay attention to it.
Yeah. I think that at least athletically, the higher your skill level goes, the more outside distractions there become. Whether that's crowd noise or trash talk from opponent to opponent. Like, I know people jaw all the time back and forth in a football game or a basketball game. Not so much on the tennis court, but I know how much that talking can happen. And the purpose of that is to get your opponent unfocused, and to throw them off of their game and have them thinking about other things besides the task at hand. Um, and so I know that you read stories about Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, and the hecklers from the crowd and all the crowd noise when the game's on the line, and then they go back and tell the story about that moment, and it's like silence, like everything is calm.
Hmm.
They're just trusting their body to make the moves and do what they know how to do. and they don't hear anything from the outside. And I think that's really cool. Like that's something that they have trained their minds to be able to do over years and years of performing at such a high level. Um, and so, like, if that's a goal of any particular athlete, like that's something that you have to work at, is to be able to tune out those distractions and focus on your job.
Now, there might be some people out there saying, how do I do that? Like, it's really hard for me to tune out the things that are right there in my ear, right? I was reading a book, great book. It talked about, in terms of tennis at least, focusing on the sound of the bounce of the ball. And that's kind
Hmm.
of a mouthful there, but I think the natural noises of sports are a great thing to focus on. If you're dribbling a basketball, there's a distinct sound that the ball makes, right? Hitting a tennis
Yep.
ball, listening to a tennis ball bounce, the pad, the football players, like
Yep.
there's just a lot of things that you can center your auditory attention to as opposed
I
to
love
the other things that are going on around you.
it's a really good way to ground yourself in the
Yeah.
moment and really think about just what's happening in the space around you that matters. Whether
Yep.
it's the
Absolutely.
I like the squeaking of the shoes. Um, it kind of depends on sport to sport, but like a lot of the court sports, you'll be able to hear that squeaking of the shoes on the court. Um, and that's a really good way to ground yourself and focus on the here and now, the moment that matters the most. I like it.
Absolutely. There's always something in whatever sport it is. Ping pong, skiing. Like I'm sure there's
Mhm.
things for I've never been a skier, but I'm
Right.
sure there's some sort of noise you can focus on there. The last one is loss of self-consciousness. All these I kind of mentioned earlier. And I don't mean that you pass out. I don't mean that you black out. Sometimes people walk off the court and they're like, I don't even
Yeah.
know what happened, right?
Yep.
Kind of sort of blacking out. But the point of this is that you're not overthinking. And the reason people don't overthink is because they trust their training and their development. And this is something that I'm huge on, right?
Yep.
I use the example of if I ask you to tie your shoe, are you going to think twice about it? Are you going to go through the motions and kind of think, well, this goes here, and then I have to put this here, and then I got to loop it around, and now I have to? Probably not. If you're
Yep.
the average person, you're just going to tie your shoe, right?
Now,
How many
real
times have
life,
you
real
tied your
life
shoe?
example, real life example. I'm trying to teach our kids to tie their shoe. I got it. For those that don't know, I got a 5 and a 7-year-old at home, and like they're kind of at the point where the youngest, especially, which is strange, but the youngest, she wants tie shoes, and she practices on mom and dad's shoes every now and then, and like I, it's hard for me to teach her how to tie her shoes because I've never, not never, but I haven't thought about that since I was probably her age. Like
Second
it just
nature.
it just happens. My fingers know what to do.
Yep.
I can do a million other things and tie my shoe at the same time.
That
Uh,
is exactly
my
what this is.
Exactly. My body trusts the training that has
Yes.
happened over the last 28, 30 years. I don't know when I started tying shoes. Mom, dad, maybe put a comment on here. But like I don't think about it, right? That's the losing of consciousness and just letting your body take over and do the task.
Yep, exactly. Think of a tennis player and when they get tight on their serves, right? How many times have you hit a serve in your life, just in general? Some maybe they
Hmm.
haven't been great serves, but how many times you know the basics, you know what you're doing, trust it,
Yep.
trust you know what you're doing, and hit the serve. Trusting
Right.
yourself in any given situation to do what you've done for X amount of years, or however
Yep.
long it is that you've been doing what you're doing. I think,
Muscle memory is a huge thing.
yeah,
And
it's
it's
it's a real thing.
oh yeah, it's in any sport too. Shooting a free throw with a game on the line, hitting a serve with, down match point second serve. Um,
Yep.
if you're a quarterback and you're making the game winning throw, time expiring, or the receiver catching that ball, like how many times have your hands caught a football? But like if you're trying to think about it and you put that pressure of the moment on yourself, how many times have your hands dropped that ball when it means something?
Exactly.
How many
Yeah.
times have your knees locked up and you short your free throw or you don't go up on your serve all the way because you're overthinking and you're not grounded in the moment. You're thinking about the outcome instead of the process.
One of my favorite my favorite basketball player, and I'll say this quote so many times on this podcast, I'm sure it's one of my favorite quotes. Shea
Mhm.
Gilgeous-Alexander, after going on a stretch of dropping 30 points a game and these absurd numbers and just one of the most consistent basketball players you'll ever see, they asked him how he did it. How do you do this, Shea? What's the secret? He said, everything I do is consistent. Everything that I do in my life is consistent, from what I eat to when I sleep to who I'm hanging out with. Like, everything is
Mhm.
consistent. And that's what muscle memory is. That's what
Yep.
muscle memory is. So when you're in those moments, when you're driving the baseline and you've got to do a fadeaway or whatever the case is, you know how to do it and you're not thinking about it. It's just time to do this and you do it. That's
Yep.
that. If any of these is the highlight, the thing to know and the thing to think about, I think it's this one. Trusting what
Yep.
you've done so many times over and over again. Um, Now, there is also ways that athletes and performers can block their progression to the flow state and kind of, you know, set themselves back, so to speak. You know what I'm saying?
I think it's kind of that over analyzing, right? Or and we kind of mentioned it here in just the last little bit, the thinking about the outcome or how to do something instead of just allowing your body to do it. You know, the oh man, what happens if I miss this free throw? Oh gosh, I tell my players when we're practicing serves and trying to learn how to serve under the pressure, like you can't let the word double fault get into your thoughts. Like because the chances of you double faulting go up dramatically if you are mentioning that phrase in your own head. And so, you know, the overthinking, the thinking about the what ifs, I think that all kind of hinders and blocks um, the the progression of how we get or the closer we can get to that flow zone, flow state.
Like I said last week, I like to give tangible,
Yep.
actionable
Yep.
things to kind of help with whatever. And I'm going to stick with that again this week. One of my favorite things to do is visualize.
Oh,
Visualization. It's huge for
we could
athletes.
have a whole episode over visualization.
We might have to, because
Let's,
it's
I would love
huge. When you have a thought, let's use your example of double faulting
that.
on a
Mhm.
second serve, right? If the immediate reaction, the immediate thought is, I'm going to double fault this, or I can't double fault this, or whatever it is about a double fault, like you said, probably going to happen. What I like to do is take that negative thought, the thing that I shouldn't be thinking, and visualize what I should be doing, what I want to happen, which is get the serve in, right? I might have to close my eyes. I might have to breathe a little bit, but I picture where I want that serve to go. I picture a full extension and I picture a good contact point. Three
Yep.
things, and I just picture them in my head. And I'm not saying I make every serve after I do that,
Right.
because that's not a cheat code, but it's something that increases my chances of something good happening. And
Yep.
it's a very useful tool. We'll add it to the list of topics to talk
Yeah.
about because it's huge, 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 huge. It kind of reminds me honestly of a book. I actually think this is the book that I just referenced, and I actually, believe it or not, I have it
Oh,
right here.
how did that happen? You just happened to have that book right
Dude,
beside you?
I have a million books
Hey,
all
I
over the
got a book.
place here.
I got a book right beside me too.
Would you look at that?
How's that?
I would show you. I'd have to move the camera around, but I got my own
Mom,
little
we
bookshelf
read.
here.
We read, Mom. It worked.
Mom, she said she listens, so
It
we're gonna
worked.
find out.
What you did
Mom,
when you were young, it worked.
Text us and tell us what books we are holding up right now, Mom. Do it. That way we know. Anyway, this is a great book. This is a fantastic book. Andrew, you talk about this with the tennis players all the time, so I'm going to let you talk a little bit more about the inner game of tennis, but
Yeah.
I do want to say one thing about it real quick. I had a sit down meeting with my basically the head professor of my positive coaching and athletic leadership program. I'm
Hmm.
not going to say which school it's at because I'm not
Oh.
necessarily proud of it, but he he said some really good things about good coaches. And yeah, I kind of explained to him that I have background in tennis, whatever. He said that Steve Kerr,
Yep.
legendary coach of the Golden State Warriors, his
Is that one?
favorite book of all time is The Inner Game of Tennis.
Yep.
Not because he's a tennis coach, not because he probably plays tennis, but because it highlights things that are applicable to all sports. And I
Everything.
absolutely love that.
Yeah. Yeah. My favorite thing about the book before I talk about what's inside of it is how short it is. Like it's a read that can happen so fast. Like you if you sat down and read, you could read that in one day if you wanted to. You could read it over a span of 2 or 3 days and chunk it out into really manageable small chunks. Anyways,
134 pages.
not that many at
134.
all.
That's it.
That's
That's a
that's a
that's a morning read. What are we?
that's a quick read. Um, but the main point that that book talks about is the idea that there are two selves in your brain, in your body, self one and self two, and the I think this conversation of the flow state can kind of be summed up in what the message of the inner game of tennis really is trying to tell you. Um, Self one is the thinking self, the analyzer, the 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 self that is thinking about everything, how to do something, what happens if you do this, what's the outcome going to be if I do this versus if I do this, and then self two is the doer, that the part of your mind and the part of your body that knows how to do things. Um, and so in the book, it talks specifically about tennis, but it also gives outside of tennis examples. But the idea is that we want to get rid of or quiet self one, the thinker. We want that self to stop operating in the moment, and we want self two to take over. We want self two to trust the training. We already talked about that. Trust your practice. Trust the drills that you've already done, that your body has developed that muscle memory for, and just allow your body to do the thing, and not think about it, not think about the what ifs, not think about the how to, think about just seeing the ball come to you, allowing your body to move to the ball, and swinging and hitting the ball, and allowing your body to just take over and do what it knows how to do. And once you allow that to happen, then we're getting to the flow state.
It doesn't mean that we're in the flow state, right?
Right.
It doesn't, just because certain things, the boxes are checked, doesn't mean that we are automatically walking through the door and now we're playing at our peak ability. There's so much that goes into play, but that is the beginning. That is a very good head start on the process, so to speak. Um, Great book, great freaking book. Please, somebody
Yeah.
read it. And if all you get out of this is to read The Inner Game of Tennis, then we did something for you.
Yeah.
Uh,
You'll be better at whatever you're trying to be better at by reading that book, I tell you what.
it actually says the classic guide to the mental side of peak performance right here.
Hey, there you go.
Bang, there we go. Um, so how do we get into the flow state? What are some other ways that we can tackle this and put ourselves in the best position to win the lottery, to get into that flow state? I'm going to talk about five of them. Okay. And these are all things that you can do as a listener that you can work on. The first one is routines,
Yep.
pre-performance routines. Huge.
Consistency, SGA.
Yep, consistency. I asked my wife, who was a collegiate dancer, danced since she was a little kid, how do you get into the flow state? How do you get into the zone? And she said, well, I think it depends for each person how they get there. And I was like, you're talking about routines. You're talking exactly about routines, which is the number one thing, the first thing that you can do to put yourself in a good position. And it varies. She's right. It varies from person to person. What I do for my pre-match routines is probably different than what you do, Andrew. And
Yep.
what Drew does before he goes golfing is probably different. He probably drinks a couple drinks before he goes. I would,
Water,
but
water. You got to stay
well,
hydrated.
that's what I mean. Water. The routines are always different for people. I know you were probably big on routines in high school, like playing doubles with you. I want you to talk to me a little bit, one or two things that you had as a routine when you were growing up and playing.
Yeah. I always tried to go through my warm up in kind of the same order. Um, just like other sports, you have your warm up that you do with your team or with your friends before you actually go on for your match in a tennis tournament. Um, and I think keeping that consistent is a big part. I encourage that with my own teams when we go. We have our practice warm up routine where we're going through our dynamic stretches and things like that. And then one of the jobs of my team captains is to lead that exact same warm up routine with the dynamic stretching before we even touch the rackets and warm, start hitting a ball beforehand. So I think that's part of it. Some of the in match routines, I had a specific order. I always went out with water and Gatorade or water and Powerade or something like that. And, I had a specific order of how I drank on my changeovers. Kind of Rafa Nadal esque, but not quite to that level. If you want to study routines, you could crash course on Rafa Nadal and learn everything you need to about consistency and routines.
Second thing is focus cues. And these are all huge, but this is a very tangible thing that I tell the majority of my athletes. I'm working with a young lady now. Her name's Michaela. She just signed to wrestle at Baker. So
Shout
shout
out
out
Michaela.
Michaela, dude, just a dog on the wrestling mat. And she wants to help her mental game. And it's we've only had 2 sessions, but she's done a great job. And one of the things that we're talking about to put into effect once wrestling season starts is a trigger word or a keyword to focus on something, to focus on whatever it is you need to focus on. It can change, it can be different, but something to take your attention from out here away from you to
Yeah,
here that you can control. And the
yeah,
emphasis is on something that you can control.
yeah,
Huge.
yeah. And I think we kind of already talked about it with the auditory focus. Just take a minute and listen to what's happening in your area that matters, not listening to the crap that's happening outside of your zone. Um, but I really liked that auditory focus point. I think that was good.
Yeah. When I was serving in pressure situations in high school, the bouncing of the ball on my serve was something that it's so soothing to me in the sense that it just kind of calmed me down and brought me to where I was on the court,
Yeah, I
ready to
wasn't a
hit a
great,
serve.
I wasn't a great basketball player, but I always liked in my free throw routine feeling the ball. Like you spin the ball in your hands, you take your couple of dribbles or whatever, and you get the lines lined up in the right spot. Like
Mhm.
feeling that, and I think that's a good, quick grounding spot. Okay, focus, breathe, take your breaths, and then you hit the shot.
I can confirm that Andrew was not the best at basketball. He made
Uh,
the right choice by continuing his tennis career in college. Now, this isn't to say that I was any better because I wasn't,
Okay, good. I'm glad we got that
but
part clarified.
Andrew was not very good at basketball either. We're definitely a tennis family. Anyway, moving on here. Um, Setting goals, setting process driven goals. We talked last week or the week before about focusing too much on results and not enough on the process and the actual action of the things. But setting process goals is huge. And that's if you have good goals, if you have realistic goals that you can achieve, it does a lot for you. One of the biggest things is building your confidence to allow yourself to perform at your best in any given situation.
I think, especially in tennis, we talk about setting the kind of goals that you have control over. You don't always have control over whether or not you win the match. Like, you don't have control over who the person is across from you or how good they are, but you can control, how many serves you hit in. You can control, across the course of a season. Maybe we need to get your contact point higher. You can control working on that yourself and making that happen and making that be a point of focus for your practice sessions and things like that. Um, and so the goals that you have control over um, are the kind of goals that need to be set, not necessarily the goals that depend on other things. So,
Absolutely. Agreed. The fourth one here is mindfulness and presence. And this is something that I think every athlete can improve on.
mhm.
Whether that's being focused at practice or in an actual match or game or whatever it is. Um, and having the ability to refocus quickly when something is distracting you, right? This all kind of ties together, like we were talking about with the auditory um, focuses, so to
Yeah.
speak. Finding a way that works for you to lock back in. A lot of times we see practices that don't necessarily have the focus level that we want them to, right? And I think that's because when somebody gets distracted, and I think of a practice where there was a deer in the field behind the tennis courts.
Oh yes, I remember
And
that day vividly.
that was the great experience. I've never seen a deer at the Olathe South tennis courts, but in terms
Neither
of
had neither
coaching
had
and
anybody else. Neither had anybody
well,
else
they sure acted that they acted like they'd never seen a deer in their life.
at all.
It really took away from the focus of practice and they were never able to lock back in, right? Which no fault of them. A deer is pretty dang cool. But when something like that happens, you have to be able to say, look at that deer.
Yeah.
High five, dude. That's freaking awesome. And then go
Cool.
back to
Go back
practice,
to work.
go back to work instead of talking about what just happened for the next hour and a half.
Yeah. I the girls basketball coach at Olathe South. Hopefully we can have her on maybe in the next, at some point.
Are
Um,
you teasing? Are you teasing a
I might be.
guest?
I don't know.
Ooh, okay. Okay.
Maybe.
Love it.
Uh, but she and I we talk about these kinds of things all the time. And this could go under the category of focus cues or whatever. But um, she tells her kids and teaches her girls that if they recognize that they're getting loose and unfocused and need to get their focus and their attention back in the moment, they fix their ponytail. They go up, they tighten their ponytail, and like on a dead ball, whether somebody's shooting free throws or and setting up for out of bounds play or whatever, like a good, I don't know if it's the physical tension of tightening the hair
Yeah.
or just something to think about and ground themselves in the moment. Um, but I think that's a really good way of resetting your focus and your presence in the moment and being mindful of what's going on, and not allowing yourself to get too distracted.
Did you ask her what people like you and me with shorter hair or no hair can do in those situations?
I have not.
Okay. We can ask her
Well,
when she's on the pod
we'll put
next
that on
time.
the list of questions when she comes on.
Absolutely. And the last thing here, number five, is we've talked about it twice already, and weeks prior, the competition zone, putting yourself in a situation to be pushed, but not pushed too much,
Yep.
and find yourself in that zone of competition, as Andrew likes to put it. I love that analogy. I love that that's a huge thing. Um, it's so important in anything that an athlete does. It's awesome.
Yep. I think that, the sense of being challenged, but being able to step up and succeed at that challenge is a really um, gratifying and self fulfilling emotion. Um, and that's where you want more, right? Like if you're just like, I'm not really being pushed, I'm gonna win. It, this isn't a challenge. That doesn't drive you to want more. You get your butt
Right.
kicked and it's no fun, and you lose a match 6-0, 6-0, or whatever the case might be. Like that's no fun. That doesn't leave you hungry for more. But even if you lose those matches in the competition zone, I'm talking tennis here. But even if you lose those matches, like that drives you to want more. That drives you to want to get better. And oh man, if I could only have a better slice backhand, I could have won a few of those important points, and maybe that match would have turned out differently. I got to work on my slice backhand at practice over the next couple of weeks. Like those are the things that competition zone is so important.
Our friend Robert, throw it back
Yeah,
to the beginning of
Bobby.
the pod here. Bobby, he talked about in his book the intrinsic reward of the being in the zone and having
Yep.
these things happen, having that be rewarding. Not, here's $1,000 rewarding, but rewarding intrinsically. So it's interesting
Mhm.
that you bring that back up. Um, I have a question for you, if that's
Yeah.
okay, if I may
Bring it
ask.
on.
Um, as a coach, how can you help players recognize when they're close to being in the zone without interrupting it? Right? As coaches, you can see when somebody's freeing, as we like to say in the tennis world, or playing out of their mind. How do you say you're playing ridiculously well? What's going on? Or how do you approach that situation?
I generally don't mention it in the moment. I think that might be something that is a better conversation for after the match or after the tournament, maybe even. Um, but in the moment, that player is focused on what they need to focus on, and obviously it's working for them. And so I don't want to take their attention or their focus away from what their mind is already set on. Um, if I went to the fence and my player is playing out of their mind, and I go, wow, man, you're really playing really well. I didn't think you'd be playing this well today. Good job. This is really great. Like, there's so many mixed messages and things that they could take from that would be counterproductive to my job as a coach. Um, and so, like, the, the after the tournament conversations could be like, what were you thinking about in the matches? Where was your head? What was your thought process going through? And if there's a swinging point in the match where that really swung momentum one direction. Like you could say how, like what was going through your head in that moment, and then talk about how obviously it was probably good. Talk about how we could do that again, or what happens in the next situation that's similar to that. How can we get back into a mind space that's close to? Obviously, it's hard to get in that moment and in that mind space. But how we can at least get close. Um, this might be a good time to talk about how I hate the term locked in. Like, like the kids have said it for the last few years. I'm locked in, coach. I'm locked in. And if you have to tell me you're locked in, you are not locked in. Like that's point blank. If you have to come to me and explain to me how focused you are, you're not there. You're not in your flow state. You are not locked in. I should be able to tell from the outside of the fence by watching what's going on the court if you're locked in. And then after the match, I'll come up to you and say, "Man, you're really locked in on that match." And you should be like, "Oh yeah, I know. It was great, wasn't it?" But if you come to me at the changeover, "Oh yeah, we're locking in on this one, coach. We're locking in here." Like, you're probably losing the next few points. Like, don't come to me with that because you're trying to manifest getting into the flow state, and that doesn't happen. You can't force yourself to get there. You have to focus on the other things and let the thinking go away. And if you're thinking about trying to lock in and, "Oh, I'm focused so hard on this next point," that no, you're not. Like, no, you're not.
All right. As we get closer to the end here, I'm going to kind of share a little bit of research or whatever you want to call it of professional athletes that have, said quotes or talked about um, some of their performances while they're in the zone. Um, the big one for me is Kobe Bryant. And I think we can all agree that he had a work ethic like nobody's business. All the stories people have heard, great basketball player, very talented. Um, he has a quote saying, "I'm in my own world. There's no noise, no distractions, just the ball in the basket. It's almost like instinct." Talking about some of his interactions with the flow state,
Yeah.
being in that zone. I think that last part about having it feel like an instinct. Like when I think of an instinct, it's like something that's natural. It's
Yeah.
something that is
Not
ingrained
learned.
in your muscle memory. Yeah,
Yeah.
not
It's
learned, right?
not a learned
It's
behavior.
almost like instinct. It's very powerful to me in that wording. That he can connect playing at the best of his ability to, I mean, I think of an instinct like eating when you're hungry, right? So it's just something you do. It's just something that happens. Um, it, Very good quote, in my
Yeah.
opinion. You
Yeah.
you got something on that one?
Yeah, well, just kind of my thoughts to kind of wrap up the whole conversation about flow state. I was thinking about it um, today, and like, how are we going to talk about this, and what am I going to say that's going to help people out? Um, I think in my head, achieving the flow state is kind of the perfect culmination of all of the little things that we talk about in the performance psychology, sports psychology world. The the preparing the right way, visualization, controlling what you can control, letting go of your mistakes and focusing on the next point or the next ball, not worrying about the outcome and staying and process driven. Um, all of that comes together perfectly in the flow state. Like, and if you want to increase the odds of you achieving that flow state, you have to do all of those things consistently and you have to do them well. And then maybe you'll get to the flow state. Like, it's not a guarantee. Just because you do those things day in and day out and you might be very consistent with it doesn't mean that every time you touch a tennis racket you're going to be in the flow state. Doesn't mean every time you lace up your basketball shoes you're going to be in the flow state. It doesn't work that way. But if you do those things and you're consistent about it, you increase the chances that on Friday night you're going to be in the flow state. Or you increase the likelihood that you're going to be closer to the flow state and you're going to be more focused on your task and playing more free the next time you're on the court than if you didn't prepare the right way or if you're focused on trying to control things that are out of your control. So I think all of those little things that we talk about on the pod, that you read about, that you hear the good coaches talk about on their interviews and things like that, all of those things have to come together perfectly. And then we have the opportunity to get to the flow state.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that being in the flow state shouldn't be a goal of
Right.
athletes. It shouldn't
Right.
be something that they strive for, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, it's something that happens. like you said, because of all the things that they've done leading up to that point. I would rather be, you know, 80% locked in. Sorry, coach,
Hey,
but
careful.
80% locked in than 30% locked in, right? I might not be 100%, but the closer that I am to that point, the the better I am. The
Yeah,
better I'm going to perform, the more focused I'm going to be. And it's just going to be hopefully all around a better experience,
yeah,
in my opinion. So with that, we're going to close. I do want to say one more time that this topic came to us from a listener, and I love that it came from a listener. I love people
it's the
reaching
cool
out and
thing.
saying
That's the
stuff.
coolest thing.
It's people commenting on the Facebook or,
Yeah,
sharing an Instagram post. It honestly means a lot to see, and I love it. What we're going to do, and Andrew and I talked about this a little bit, and I think if you've made it this far in the pod, you are one of our top listeners, I'm sure. So we are going to ask something of you, whether you're watching, whether you're listening, whatever it may be. We are going to ask that you either give us a topic that you think would be good to be discussed,
hmm
or if we already have a topic picked, like we do for next week, you drop us a question in the comments on whatever platform you're on about something to do with that topic. So, for example, next week we're going to talk about failure, and kind of how it applies, what it means, how athletes can handle it, all the good stuff. There might be some questions that you, as the listener, have about failure. How do I
yeah,
approach this situation? This happened to me, and I don't think I handled it right. How could I have handled it differently? Whatever it may be, I kind of want to see if we can help the people out, so to speak.
yeah.
You can drop a question about what should I name my cat, and I will answer it. You can drop. This isn't limited. This is it can be whatever. We might not answer it if
Preferably about the topic of failure, but it doesn't have to be.
preferably doesn't have to be. I love it. So whether you're on YouTube or Instagram or Spotify, I can see all the comments on the posts when I post them. Drop us a question. Drop us something that you want us to talk about, and we'll do our research and we'll plan it out and we'll make sure that it's discussed. Um,
Let the people know what they want to know. That's what we're all about.
Gets the people going. Great song. Gets the
Well sung.
it's provocative.
Gets
It's
the
not.
people going.
Gets the people going. This is so much fun. It's something I look forward to every time that we record. Again, we talked about the flow state, how athletes and performers can put themselves in a better position to get there. And even if they're not there fully, just being a little bit closer helps tremendously. I'm going to end with a reminder to follow me, Set Point Mental Edge, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify. Set Point Sessions is on Spotify, YouTube, setpointmentaledge.com. Check it all out. Please, I need
Hit
your
him up.
clicks. Please
Hit him up.
help me help you.
There you
How about
go.
that? Help me help you.
There you go.
Reach out if you have anything. DMs are always open. My phone number is out there. Whatever it is, send me an email. Um, I am passionate about this, and I think Andrew is obviously passionate about this. And I think the more that we grow and the more people that we can help, the better the world can be. I know that
Absolutely.
sounds cheesy, but
No, if there are things that we talk about that you think can apply to your friends or family, like send a link their way. Let's spread the word. Get them out there.
absolutely. And this may be a little lengthy in time, like we're looking at about 50 minutes here, but give them a timestamp. Send it to them and say, "Hey, I want you to listen
Right.
to this part of the pod." Doesn't have to be the whole thing. I know we get kind of boring sometimes, but uh, you know, send them a clip, send them something that you want them to hear. Spread the love, spread the word. I've got nothing else. Andrew, if you've got something, you've got the floor.
Ah, what a night. What a night. Love it.
We're excited to get back and do this again. We've got guests coming up. We've got guests lined up. we're really excited to just kind of bring people into the set point sessions world, pick their brains and go from there. So thank you all for tuning in and listening. I'm Austin. This is Andrew. This is Set Point Sessions. We will see you guys next week. Goodbye.